of yesteryear. Now today happens to be, I believe, this week on the Chet of Cheshvan, the 8th of Cheshvan, the Hilula of Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaCohen, very famous rabbi of his time. He would actually go on to become a very prominent rabbi in Egypt. He was born actually in the year 1866, passed away 98 years ago in 1927. To be precise, it was the 3rd of November of that year, respectively, over there. He would become the rabbi, the Ashkenazic rabbi of Cairo, respectively. I think there was a congregation at that stage in time. He would be the author, Mechabe Pora Shit Parsem Beshalal Yuzamat Shibinyanhen Nision Lechidush Hasmicha Umizamei Chinuch. Very interesting enough, there was like a form of rabbinic ordination he would try to revive at that point in time. Recommend everyone to look into that. And he was very, very well known among all the various different communities in the South. Let's explore a few of the highlights of the famous rabbi's life. Now, he was born in Tiberias. I believe this was on the 11th of Nisan in 1866. I believe his father was a famous rabbi. I believe his father's name was Rav Natan Bar Benjamin Mokosov, if I'm not mistaken. And he would learn in yeshiva in Tiberias and would be ordained to the rabbinate over there. So I'm not too sure which yeshiva it was in of itself, but he will be there. And I think it was around the 1896, approximately. He would be close to 30 years of age. B'shanat Tafresh Nun Zayin Na'anat Lizmanat Ha'aidat Ashkenazit B'Kahir She'eta Az Bereshit Hitlakudata. They would actually invite him, I think, the Ashkenazic community to Cairo in that specific year. And he would accept a position over there to become the chief rabbi of the community. This was a prominent position. V'kibel ba et kunat harab Rashi. I'm just stating over what it's saying over here. Harab Rashi shehatamid ba k'shlushim shema. Argan et hakeilat v'yasad ba mostot chinuch v'chesed shenotro keyemet l'meshech shanim. So you take on this, let's say, this primary position at that stage in time. Obviously a very prominent position in Cairo. Remember, Egypt had a prominent, not just Ashkenazic community, but most, I would assume, most predominantly would have been a much larger Sephardic community also, which is very, very interesting. So that would be a prominent position in time and big undertaking. Ahmad Bekeshe Hilkati Im Harav Kook. So seemingly he had a strong connection with the famous Rabbi Kook. Who was he? Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Cohen Kook, who was, I believe, the chief rabbi of Israel between the years 1921 to 1935, respectively. A very famous rabbi we've spoken about on various occasions here inside this series, which I recommend everyone to actually look into. And please look at it. לצד פעילותו הרב חיבר ופרסם מספר ספרים בכמה תחומים, ביניהם כללית חתנים, one of the books, ריכוז דינים ומנהגים, בחיי הנישואין. He would speak about various different topics and author different works. אבל מצרים, אוסף הספדים על גדולי ישראל. They would actually relate over various different hespedim, let's say eulogies, connected to various different great rabbis that were actually from Israel. Anyone tuning in at the moment, we're exploring the history of a great Egyptian rabbi. Please subscribe to the channel and join our community now. I'd really, really appreciate it if you could, fantastic people could subscribe to our channel and join the community. Yes, that's very, very interesting. So we're just speaking about the great rabbi today. Okay. Han Neshama V'Kdish. This was another Torah work of his. Han Neshama V'Kdish. This is Mechake Alinyan Yishirot HaNefesh Baruch HaKabbalah. It was a book seemingly connected to Kabbalic teachings. Then there was a Choveret HaKdish Al Mako HaKdish Dino Manigo Vaniach B'Ktav Yad. This book was, I think, left in manuscript form in himself. And then there was Sefer Trokim. This was, I think, 25 nusachim shall get, different kinds of writings with regards to a divorce document. The matzivim shonim. Then Sifra ha'ikari hu smichat chachamim shebo hevia et adrisha lechidush Sanhedrin b'Yisrael. So yes, that's a very interesting. That was, I believe, his main book, which was for the renewal, I think, for the ordinations of sages within regards to the Sanhedrin. This is something I think we've spoken about this idea in depth, Yomi, if I'm not mistaken, before, but this first time speaking about the famous rabbi, we are actually speaking about this himself. Now, his book, I think, he tried to, I think, do a form of strengthening of authority of the rabbinate in Israel. I would use, let's say, great amounts of his resources and times within regards to trying to achieve this. And I'll say what it says over here in Hebrew to give it a precise title. Sivro ha'ikari hu smichat chachamim shebo heviya et הדרישה לחידוש סנהדרין בישראל כדי לחזק את סמיכות הרבנות. לרעיונו זה התמסר במרץ רב דרש לכונן מועצים בשם כנסת הגדולה וייסד אגודת רבנים שמנתה למעלה 500 חברים בכל תפוצות ישראל. כתוצאה מפעולה זו התכנס בחודש אב תרס"ג Congress. There was a specific Congress that, let's say, took place in this month of Av, in that specific year of תרס"ג. עולמי של רבנים בקרוקוב בהשתתפות של הרב אהרן. I think from various rabbis from Poland were connected to this. לטקס עצה להרמת דגל התורה ולבקש אופן נאות ורציני לגדוע הפרוצות ולבנות הנידחות. בין משפחתי הכינוס היו גם הרב אליהו Akiva Rabinovich, so a famous rabbi named Rabbi Eliyahu Akiva Rabinovich would actually join this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. He himself happens to be the rabbi of Plotzbach, if I'm not mistaken, and I think he would be connected to journalism to some degree, and I think he was one of the founders in Europe of the Agudat Yisrael. Very interesting. Another rabbi that would take place was Rabbi Mendel HaCohen, another famous rabbi of his time. And I think together with Rav Cohen, it will come out to Europe, also the chief rabbi of Alexandria, Rabbi Eliyahu Bechor Chazan. I think there was a connection within regards to that. Rabbi Eliyahu Bechor Chazan was the chief rabbi of Alexandria. He was a Sephardi rabbi. Let's say something about him for a minute. He was born in the year 1848 and passed away in 1908. He was the head of Jewish court in Jerusalem. He was a chief rabbi also. That's something that we must point out. He was I think also at one stage in time, he'd be the chief rabbi of Tripoli, of Libya, and he'd be the chief rabbi of Alexandria, Mitzrayim. He was, let's just say, considered one of the main rabbis over there. As it says, Eliyahu Bechor Chazan גם נחשב בעיני רבים כאחד מבשרי הציונות בקרב הספרדים. He was like a Sephardic Zionistic leader. לאור פעילותו הרבה לקידום חזון יושב ארץ ישראל, ויתעסק בה ישות יהודית עצמאית. So he really also believed, I think, within regards to that. Just say a word within, because we're talking about the chief rabbi, Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaCohen. So he was working, I think, alongside with Rabbi Eliyahu Bechor Chazan in Egypt at that point in time. So Rabbi Chazan was actually born, I think, in Izmir in Turkey in 1848, and he actually came from a great line of rabbis. I think they were actually descended from King David. I think his great grandfather, if I'm not mistaken, was Rabbi Raphael Yosef Chazan. I think was, if I'm not mistaken, chief rabbi and head rabbi in Izmir. And I think another one, I think his grandfather was Rabbi Chaim David Chazan, another great rabbi. He happens to be a Rishon LeZion, a chief rabbi, and the author of the Shut Nadiv Lev. And yes, that was very prominent. So he really came into great auspices, Rabbi Chazan did. And it's interesting, he actually got married into a great family. His wife's name was Rabbinit Dina, the daughter of Rabbi Yeshua Bardaki of Yerushalayim. So very, very well connected. Rabbi Bardaki, if I'm not mistaken, was the head of the Ashkenazic Kahila in Jerusalem in his specific point in time. I think we mentioned about him before, and he was very much great in Eretz Yisrael. I think he was part of the Bet Din of Rabbi Avraham Ashkenazi, who I think also happened to be a Rishon LeZion. I think he passed away in 1880. Also Rabbi Rachamim Yosef Franco, another one of the great rabbis of Hebron in his point in time, great Sephardi rabbis over there. I think he would become appointed the head of Jewish court in Jerusalem, a very prominent position, and he was very well traveled. He was well known, Rabbi Chazan was, for being a Shluchei de Rabbanan, going out to various places, representing Jerusalem. I think he was in connection with England, France, Italy, and would actually have a meeting with Moses Montefiore, Sir Moses Montefiore, and various other great rabbis, I believe, from Italy in this point in time. And I think he would actually take over from Rabbi Avraham Chaim Adadi as a head rabbi of the Kahila in Tripoli after that. And then he would become the chief rabbi of Tripoli, I think, between 1874 to 1888. So very prominent positions. He was very well decorated. And much, I think, is chronicled within regards to that specific point in time. Then come on, 1888, eventually, he become the chief rabbi of Alexandria in Egypt. And remember, that's a prominent position. He was in contact with Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaCohen, who we mentioned about here today. He would be a founder in Egypt of Talmud Torah, and for many people of the Kahila, he was educating inside the synagogue over there of the congregation, and was taking on various different undertakings, let's just say himself. I think Rabbi Mordechai Kohen will chronicle also about him. He was also another famous rabbi of his time, and he would take on these important roles, I think, in, if I'm not mistaken, just to go back to it, he was very, very important. 1888, he comes to Alexandria. He would have taken various different positions, I think for 20 years it was. Specifically over there, he was at the premiership of his specific position. I think he was very close also to another great Egyptian rabbi, Rabbi Aharon ben Shimon, and the great posek and rabbi. I think he was actually a chief rabbi of Cairo, also a Sephardic chief rabbi. Not sure if he was at the same time period in of itself as Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaCohen. He was also another important position, let's just say. It was close, I think, also to Rabbi Yaakov Shaul Elishar, very great rabbis. I think eventually Rabbi Chazan would actually return to Eretz Yisrael, I think in Taf Reish Samachet. And I think he passed away shortly afterwards, but he was a great rabbi of his time. And it says afterwards, I think it will be Rabbi Raphael de la Pargola will actually take over his position as a head rabbi of Egypt. So very, very interesting. Okay, so he was, Rabbi Bechor Hazan was, I think, very, very close, if I'm not mistaken, to Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaCohen. He was also the author of various different great Torah works, which we have to point out, including Tulamot Lev, the Zichron Yerushalayim, and various other books, also Neve Shalom, Yismach Lev, Asfat Dinim, and Zichron Eliyahu, and various different contrasts and other books also. So we went on a bit of a tangent. We were speaking now about Rabbi Eliyahu Bechor Hazan, who would also become a chief rabbi. But let's get back to Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaCohen, who happens to be speaking about today. He wrote various different books. He spoke about the smicha, the rabbinic coordination of his Pratei HaKongress B'Korotav, Torah B'Harchava B'Ituni HaTkufa, B'Ka'al Yad Rav Me'Poltobo B'Yochanim Apeles, Va'al Yidei Harav HaKohen עצמו בספר כנסת הגדולה, מחברת אגודת רבנים, ובנימה ביקורתית יוצא על יד אדמו"ר מזווירצה, בספר מקץ נדמים. Okay, so what's it saying over here? I'll just try and give a brief outline. He would actually chronicle and give details with regards to this specific congress, and was described in the newspaper at the time. One of the newspapers, I think, was called the Peles, if I'm not mistaken, and within regards to this congress, and was connected to Rabbi Zuereti, if I'm not mistaken, and was published, I think, by the Rabbinical Association there, and very, very interesting. And various different documents were, let's say, chronicled in various different places, different sources, all over the place. So just to continue saying, within regards to him, we're just talking about, okay. מחברת אגודת רבנים מינים בקירותית יוצא על יד האדמו"ר מזווירצה בספר מקיץ נדרים. הזרים גם תעודה בפרוטובות בקונגרס ארוחות בת עמי על אפרים דיאנרד בארצות הברית באנציקלופדיה אוצר ישראל. I think it's featured very much in the אוצר ישראל encyclopedia. ברבות השנים אף ארגן הרב הכהן קבוצת רוכשים לשטחי מגורים בארץ ישראל. בין אדמות בית הכרם ובין עוד לא היה שם יישוב. בזמנו נעשו הצעדים הראשונים. ייסוד שכונת כנסת ישראל. He had a connection with the Knesset ישראל. בדעתו היה להקים בתוכה את בית המוסד הדתי העליון של הסנהדרין המחודשת. So he tried to establish these places over here, and he passed away in Haifa on the 8th of Cheshvan, Tafresh Pei Chet, and was buried in the, I think, old Jewish burial plot in Haifa, if I'm not mistaken, Knesset Yisrael. Now, Rabbi Aharon Mendel left some Torah works. Also, we're going to explore a few of the highlights of the books in due course. Included among it was the Klalit Chatanim. This was Rukuz Dinim Menegei B'Chaya Nisuin. This was printed in Cairo, in Tafresh Ayin. Then the Abel Mitzrayim, this was in two sections, Osef Aspeidim, this was once again printed in Cairo in its time. Another book was the Smichat Chachamim, within regards to the subject of rabbinic coordination. And then the Knesset HaGedolah, which was in two Chalakim, so it was very well written. Haneshama B'Kdish That was another book of his, printed in Jerusalem once again. Chovrat HaKedish. This was Al Makor HaKedish Dino Manhiga. Now, another book of his was Sefer HaAguda, Agudat Rabbanim Aklal, another important book printed in Cairo, if I'm not mistaken. Then Congress Agunot. This was Haskamot from the great rabbis of his generation, with regards to the topic of get, divorce documents also, and Yad Ra'am, Kinush Shel Kol Ketavav, which was very similar drashot, the writings with regards to Jewish festivals. This actually was printed, if I'm not mistaken, in Tel Aviv, so you can see what a decorated, busy rabbi he was in. So let's just recap a bit more within regards to him. He actually came, if I'm not mistaken, from, he grew up with great Torah, Yirat Shamayim, I think in Tiberias, also in Tzfat, I think when he was younger, he might have been there also, and especially close to Rabbi Chaim Shmuel HaKohen Konorati, another rabbi we've spoken about on various occasions here. He happened to have been the rabbi of Tiberias in his time. He's a rabbi I think we mentioned about on various occasions, Rabbi Konorati. Let's just say something within regards to him for a minute. He's a key figure, especially in his life. He lived between 1810 to 1873. Obviously, he was a rabbi of Chacham Bashi, the chief rabbi of Tiberias. He was one of the great rabbis of his time. I think he was actually from Italy, where he was born in 1810. I'm not sure when his Hilul is. He was 63 years of age when he passed away. And I think in Tiberias, he took on many different undertakings. And I think Kim Et Hamevanash Al Kebet Rab Me Balanes. I think this was at one stage in time in the 1830s. 1839, he will establish in Tiberias the foundations of Beit Knesset Midrash Chashmach, if I'm not mistaken, Roshei Tevot Shel Shemo, and Beit Knesset has Senior, if I'm not mistaken. 1840, if I'm not mistaken, he become a Shluchei Rabbanan, representing, I think, Israel, those different places, and go to Turkey over there, especially on behalf of Rabbi Meir Bal Hanes organization. You'll go also to Saloniki, and also in Greece, and also to Rista, if I'm not mistaken, in Italy. So very well traveled in those specific areas. And when he was back in Tiberias, he would establish a synagogue, Beit Knesset, Yeshivat Midrash Shmuel, if I'm not mistaken. And also, I think, a mikveh over there. In 1848, he would actually go out on another journey of Kononotori, I think, back to Italy also. He passed away, I think, in 1873. He was a very great rabbi of his time, and was buried also in Tiberias, in the old cemetery in itself. I think his daughter, Esther Sarah, got married to the famous Kabbalist rabbi we actually spoke about, I think, yesterday in another video, Rav Yaakov Sheltiel Nino, the author of the Emet Yaakov and Zere Yaakov, respectively. So very, very interesting. And one of his grandchildren was Rabbi Chaim Aharon Al-Chadif, another one of the great rabbis and great Shlochei Rabbanans of Tiberias of his point of time, and was a Chacham Bashia, if I'm not mistaken, a chief rabbi of Tiberias from 1930. And Zeki El-Chadif was also a Rosh Ha'ir, I think he was a mayor, if I'm not mistaken, of Tiberias between 1923 to 1938, but something on those realms. And I think he had a connection also to Rabbi Shlomo Yaluz, a rabbi actually we spoke about also last couple of days. I think yes, it actually happens to be Rabbi Shlomo Yaluz's Hilulei, if I'm not mistaken. He was a very important rabbi. He was a chief rabbi of Libya, I think between 1946 and 1949. And his Talmud of Rav Konroti, another one of his Talmud, and we mentioned about how Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaCohen would actually learn under him. Yeah, he would also have, and there'll be another Talmud connected to Rabbi Konroti, Rav Chabib Chaim David Saton, who was a great rabbi. I think a chief rabbi of Haifa, if I'm not mistaken, head of Jewish court also in Tiberias. Also Rabbi Yamin Kalfon, another great rabbi we mentioned about on various occasions before, another Shliach the Rabbanan, and also a head rabbi in Haifa and Tiberias, respectively. He would actually be the opener of various different places, including the Arad and the Yehudi Ba'ir. And Yosef Shmuel Abu Lafi, another Abu Lafi's famous family, let's just say, where great rabbis, let's just say, are coming from in of itself, and from Tiberias and so on and so forth. Very, very interesting. So yeah, that's just talking about his rabbi, Rabbi Shmuel HaKohen Kontori. He was Rabbi Aharon Mendel HaCohen, was learning under his auspices at a young age. It's actually interesting. I believe he would get married to Marat Sarah. She came from, I think, the Shulman Mishpacha. 1887 will be when the time period, once again, as we said before, he would become the rabbi of a congregation in Cairo, the Ashkenazi congregation there. And I think that was this congregation that was actually established back in the year 1865, if I'm not mistaken. So very, very interesting. And I think in 1901, he would bring about that famous Kol Koreh, Lakamat Moatzot Rabbanim Olamit, B'Shem Knesset Yisrael. V'chen, I think in 1903, there was this congress that actually came about of great rabbis, 500 famous rabbis in Poland, if I'm not mistaken. So see, it was like a really hands-on, very well connected all over the world. 1903, that's when his book would actually come out, the Knesset Chachamim. 1904 will bring about another book. I think 1908 would see the Evel Mitzrayim come out. 1910, I believe, the book, the Klalit Chatanim, which was the Dinim Minhagim, as I mentioned before. 1911 we'll see the Kuntras B'Shem Smichat Chachamim, another important work. 1930 we'll see the Sefer HaAguda, which is in the Gudat Rabbanim. 1917, after 30 years of working as a Ashkenazic chief rabbi of Cairo, he would actually move his position at that point in time. And very, very interesting. So I believe he'll take on various different undertakings at that stage in time. I think we mentioned about this great rabbi before, on famous rabbi, on various occasions also. So that's very interesting. Yeah, so he was very, very close to Sephardi Rabbanim, and he was able to, in many of his responses, he wouldn't just speak about Ashkenazic customs, because he obviously was the Ashkenazi rabbi over there, but he would combine it and speak about the Sephardic halachot, what's their way. So he would, I think, especially in Cairo, the Shechita committee, if I'm not mistaken, would take in consideration all the different minhagim, which is very interesting. Yeah, so I think he became a judge in the court of the famous Rabbi Aharon Ben Shimon, who was a rabbi of Cairo of his time. That's something that we mentioned about before. And what's interesting is you can see how well decorated this great Chacham actually happened to have been at that stage in time. 1921, his book, the Hanishma, was actually published at that stage in time. And the remains of the soul, the Chovrot Kaddish, laws and customs also. There was a kuntris on agunot, the permission within regards to divorcing within regards to the husband. It's in a whole realm of himself. And you make Aliyah, I think, right at the end of his life to Eretz Israel, and was settled in Haifa. I think that was around in 1927, and passed away shortly after this was reported over. So it was famous rabbi. I think his last book, if I'm not mistaken, the Yad Vrem, will be published in the year 1960, if I'm not mistaken. Remember, he passed away in 1927. So he was approximately, at the time passing away, I think he was about, let's just say, let's get this correct, about 61 years of age, the famous rabbi was. Let's explore a few of the highlights of his important book, because he wrote a lot of different writings. One of them in the Yad Ra'im, I think in Chelek Bet, he would actually write, Melamed ma shnotnim la'aniyim, melashon tzedek, melashon matana. This is one of the teachings he will go over. Another one, Melamed shemi, she'elu lamdan, yesh lo chelek b'torah b'shmiah. Another important teaching from the Yad Ra'im. Melamed ki tisa et rosh haniftar, b'tzedakah torah v'hatzvila. Another important teaching, once again from the Yad Ra'im. I think in Chelek Bet this actually happened. This was actually printed, I think, in the year 1960, as we mentioned about before. Another important teaching says, Melamed kavanat briyat olam sheyeh min enoshei chevret achat. This was printed, I think, connected to a drasha with regards to Lag BaOmer in Amud Reish Samachei, if I'm not mistaken, once again from the Yad Ra'am, important book. Melamed kavanat briyat olam sheyeh min enoshei chevret achat. Once again, I think this is actually, from page Reish Samachei. Melamed sheskula hektish mikoach hamunah shel klalot Yisrael. Once again from the same book, printed in Tel Aviv. I think in Shin Mem Bet. Another teaching. Melamed lebnei teman shekakol am Yisrael mizrach u'marav kamono kamohem. This actually, once again, the Yad Ra'em book over here, and this, I believe, is very much part of page Reish Tet, I believe. So it was a famous rabbi of his time. Now, if any of you are happen to descend from him, or you're familiar with him, please let me know and send me an email. I would love to hear more information. Now, friends, we are also a community here. We're learning about great rabbis of yesteryear. Now, if you send from any great chachamim that I've spoken about from yesteryear, please send me an email. I would love to hear more information about the great chachamim, respectively. Now, if you feel anyone is interested in watching any of these videos, friends, please share these videos also to other people. Now, a favor to ask all of you, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. We're nearing 7,500 subscribers, which is a phenomenal achievement. So please join our community and let us reach that goal. And we do a lot of videos here on this series, not just videos on great rabbis. We're speaking about various different kahilot, respectively different congregations, different countries. That's another new project that we are speaking about, which we're very, very much excited about, that we have to point out. So that's very, very important. And over here we're speaking about famous Egyptian rabbi, which is always a breath of fresh air to speak about rabbis from all over the world. We actually speak mostly about Ottoman rabbis that made it, especially in the part of the Ottoman Empire, North Africa, Asian, also some Ethiopian rabbis, even we've included inside the series, and various other great chachamim of yesteryear. So how important it is, and we appreciate it a lot if people are subscribing to our endeavor over here and joining our community, which is a phenomenal thing. I really, really appreciate it, friends. So wishing you well. Shavua Tov V'rach. We just came out of Parshat Noach over here in Israel. So it's been a important week in of itself, and very, very good week also. So it's always good to learn more information about famous rabbis of yesteryear, and and to explore more. So friends, everyone subscribe. Take care. Thanks everyone for watching, and have a great day. Take care. Thank you.